I don't want to be too critical of Thomas Tuchel after 2 games in the World Cup, but there's 2 videos going around currently on social media that make me want to be more critical of him, especially after that performance against Ghana. Now, earlier in the week, there was a snippet of training where he was speaking quite directly to Jed Spence, talking about him maybe showing a bit more effort, all this kind of stuff. Now, lo and behold, Jed Spence started the game against Ghana, and I think there's a reason behind that was his speed, especially because I think Thomas Tuchel may have seen that Ghana were going to try to do the counter-attack thing, and there's not much pace in our back line. And with the absence of someone like Kyle Walker to be able to mop up mistakes, all that kind of stuff, relying on someone's speed, such as Jed Spence, is probably something that Thomas Tuchel was thinking about. However, there is another clip that's going around that's collecting lots of views this morning of Thomas Tuchel on the sideline against Ghana, and he's screaming at Jed Spence, screaming at Jed Spence, trying to get his attention. And then it seems as though Jed Spence's response is one of, well, kind of nonchalant-ish, right? And Thomas Tuchel very vividly, very dynamically, openly says, give and go. There needs to be, he's trying to say there needs to be pace. And he even said it to Anthony Gordon as well. He said to Jed, give and go. And he turned to Ant and said, Ant, give and go. Now, this speaks volumes about what he was expecting from the team. Because every single person can sit here and say, and we know that the performance that we saw yesterday from England was a stark contrast. The most stark contrast to last week's against Croatia. And as England fans, it's very easy to just be like, so what happened? Why is this the case? And I think it's quite simple, really. I think Thomas Tuchel got it wrong. I said it to my co-host yesterday on the live stream. I said, sometimes top managers, they outthink themselves. Now, when I saw the starting lineup, I thought we're going to play the same way. Now, obviously, we weren't going to be able to play the same way because Ghana were very content with just sitting in the low block. But this is where I believe top managers show their worth. If we saw that was going to be the case, after 45 minutes, make a change. If you're seeing that the players that you've put into the side aren't doing the job that you've asked them to do, aka Jed Spence on the left, he was asking him to hold his width. Because what was happening is Gordon was coming inside, and so was he. And there was no width on the left-hand side. The left-hand side did not work yesterday. It was absolutely atrocious. But then my expectation of Tuchel is to make the change. I understand, there's a responsibility on the players to do what they're there to do. These are professional players. They play at high level. They're not scrubs. And some way, somehow, maybe you should work it out. And I think, as much as the manager has a responsibility, I do think the players have a responsibility to be able to say, this isn't working. Let's change it. And I'm worried. I'm worried that Ghana set the blueprint for every single team that's not going to attack us. The reason why the game plan worked last week, the reason why Harry Kane was able to do what he did last week is because Croatia were a team that weren't going to sit back in the low block. And the fact of the matter is, in the World Cup, until you reach maybe the quarterfinals, at least the last 16, a lot of teams are going to sit back in the low block, especially against a team with the quality of England. You have to respond. And I think Tuchel got it wrong with the original starting lineup. But then at the same time, those players are good enough to be able to adjust. Harry Kane was nullified yesterday. Absolutely nullified yesterday. And he's our captain, but it was, I don't know about anybody else that watched the game. I was watching the game and I thought to myself, this just reminds me of Southgate. Everything about this reminds me of Southgate. The team selection in terms of, the team selection, I was actually fine with it. But then once I saw about 10 minutes into the game that things weren't working, I'm like, I don't see any players that are going to do what is necessary. The players that were looking so dynamic last week were looking lethargic and absolutely out of ideas within the first 10 minutes. But this is where a manager has to step up. This is where a manager has to do what he's paid to do what he's been brought in to do. And what we all acclaimed Tuchel last week for was this amazing halftime talk that said, "Yo, if we're gonna lose, then we lose our way." Where was that yesterday? Where was the players that would take the game by the scruff of the neck and make it happen? We didn't see anything dynamic from England until the likes of O'Reilly came on, Rashford and Saka. And to be honest, those three should be starting for England. Now, I'm going to say something that might be quite controversial as a Villa fan. And if you haven't watched my stream, go watch it, because I said it right at the beginning. I don't think Ezri Konsa can play in this team. Like, you know what? I saw everybody, when he made that tackle that stopped Ghana from scoring, originally everyone was like, yeah, man, what good concept. But I was like, I saw the replay and straight away I was like, that's a pen. We're so lucky. But this is Ezri Konsa. I respect him. I rate him. I love what he's done with Aston Villa. But everything that you guys are seeing now is what I've seen every single week for Aston Villa. This guy doesn't progress the ball. He plays very scared. And that's okay if you've got another centre-back that likes to progress the ball. So that's why Stones was there last week. And this is why I think the best England centre-back pairing of the people that we have there is Stones and Gueye. Now, I know Tuchel was thinking the pace of the Ghanaians. That's why he tried to play those guys, because maybe there's a little bit more recovery place. And we saw it, even though Ezri did give a penalty away. We saw it. But we also saw how frail the England back four was. Another change, where's the continuity? There was a time where the England back four was so stable that they had relationships. You're changing every single game. Reece James didn't have the best game yesterday. Jed Spence had a mare yesterday. Gueye was quiet. Konsa, liability. You can't win World Cups doing that. You can't win World Cup games doing that. So as much as we're talking about the attacking element of things, there's a defensive element that we have to think about. And I want to see John Stones start. But again, Tuchel has to double down, because yesterday was a game where the game was screaming out for someone creative. Now, you've left Phil Foden and Cole Palmer out of the team. I recognise that that's because they don't fit the system that you want to play. But when you come up against a low block, you need creative players. You know what? Fair enough, you don't have those players there with you. But then you know what? You do have players in the squad that can do a job. Play Morgan Rogers. Another thing, and some people may not agree with me on this one, but I think Kobbie Mainoo would have been a great player to play in that game. He's the kind of player that links the midfield to the front areas. He's a link player. There's no Adam Wharton, so the best other option that you have that can do that job, and we've seen him do it for United, we've seen him do it for England, Kobbie Mainoo. I think against Panama, let's roll the dice, man. Let's roll the dice and make it work. I think Tuchel, my worry is, and I don't know, maybe some Chelsea fans can give me some insight. Is he stubborn? I don't know much about him. Is he one of the managers that will say, this is my system, I'm sticking with my system, and I'm not changing it for anybody? Or I'm not changing my personality. This is my first 11, and this is what we're doing. Is he that kind of coach? Let me know. Because if he is, we're in problems. Because the game that we can play won't actually come to fruition until the later rounds. But we need to get there. There's a chance. Like, obviously we're going to go through, but there's a chance we could go through in third. Oh, well, to be fair, no, it's not. There's not really a chance we can go through in third. But second just blows out the seeding that we worked so hard for out the water. So we need to do something. Something needs to happen. So, yeah. And my thing is, watching that video of Tuchel screaming at Jed Spence, I'm like, why play him then? If that's the case, if he's frustrating you, if he's not doing what he's required, take him off. O'Reilly came on and changed the game. and he adds something different to our attack. He's tall. He's got a great heading ability, great leap, all that kind of stuff. And against a low block, you need to just fizz the ball in. That's what worked. That's what worked against Croatia as well. We weren't shy with putting the ball into the box, but yesterday we weren't doing any of that. And to be fair, actually, let me be honest. None of the crosses were getting past the first man. Poor quality, but we need to do something, man. And then again, if Harry Kane isn't gonna be the person, if he's not gonna do his dropping deep thing and bring people in, because he may not work against a low block, because they're not gonna follow you out. You need a person that can spin off. And the perfect person's on the bench, Ollie Watkins. And if we think back to the Euros 2 years ago, the reason why we beat Netherlands is because of an Ollie Watkins winner. And Southgate gambled and took Harry Kane off. Because Ollie Watkins does something different. Now is the time. Let's not get stuck on the players' names. Let's not get stuck on what they did in the domestic league. It's about this England setup. And in international football, the same team that won one game may not beat another team. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So I'm trying to stay up. We'll see what happens against Panama, because the likelihood is they're going to sit in the low block. What will Tuchel do? Let me know. Guys, I'm interested in hearing your thoughts. Make sure you put them in the comments. Make sure you like and subbing to the channel. Make sure you join me on Saturday for the watch along. If you are in Birmingham, make sure you come and find me at the lounge at Boldmere. It was great yesterday. And yeah, peace.